Hello YouTube, and welcome back to the Loose Transistor channel. I'm your host Lucas, and we're here today kicking off our first episode of our GitGud series. The reason I decided to start this GitGud series is because I wanted to help out people who are just getting started in the hobby or who are thinking about joining the hobby and are not sure how to do it or what to look for in terms of gear and learning how to fly and all that other stuff. So I decided to start this series and help some people out who are brand new to the hobby. Hopefully that way we can get more people flying FPV and our community will grow, which is good for us. So this might not appeal to a lot of you because you already have been flying for a while, but if you're new, stick around because you might learn some stuff, and if you're not and you want to stick around anyway, awesome. We'll probably cover some pretty interesting stuff. So for our first episode of the series, I'm going to be talking about simulators. And the reason I chose to talk about simulators as the first episode is because I believe it's a very, very good way for somebody to start learning how to fly, or for somebody who has no idea whether or not they want to try FPV to get a taste for it without spending a ton of money or without having to actually buy a drone or anything like that. And you can do it from the comfort of your own house. All you need really is a computer, or you can actually even do it on a phone for some of them. But yeah, so this is a really, really good way for you to get an idea whether or not you want to do this thing. Also, I used simulators a lot when I was first learning to fly because it helped me learn the basics and helped me break less stuff. Because when I bought a drone and I started flying FPV, and within 3 flights I had the thing completely totaled. So I realized that it was going to be a pretty expensive venture to learn FPV if that was going to be how things were going to go. So lo and behold, there were some simulators, and that really helped me out. And also the series that JBart has on how to fly, like he takes you step by step with the FPV freerider and teaches you throttle control, and like literally every step you need to know, or the very basics of flying are there. So if you want to check that out, I'll throw a link in the description as well, so you guys can go there. If you're brand new and trying to learn some techniques, that's a great thing. I'm not going to cover techniques or anything like that in this video. We're just going to talk about simulators and how they compare, and which ones I would recommend for you guys. Another thing that you're going to want to get your hands on, or at least at first, is some sort of controller. What I have here is a radio link that got busted. The RF board on it died, but it still works as a link or as a trainer. So I'm using this guy here with this with a USB dongle, and everything that I mentioned here in terms of like USB connectivity and all that stuff is going to be in the description as well, so you guys can procure yourselves and set yourselves up. So the reason you want some sort of controller that's shaped like this, and it doesn't matter if you thumb or if you pinch, does not matter. It's because of the ergonomics. You want to get something that is going to be as close as possible to the real thing, so that you start building that muscle memory and it starts becoming second nature. You think about where the quad's going to go, and your hands just do it without you really having to concentrate on it. But that takes some time. So you're going to want something that is as close as possible to the real thing. You can fly some of these sims using just an Xbox controller, but that's not going to be a very good analog. And to start off with, like the throttle stick right here, how it sits there and it stays wherever I leave it, that's not going to happen on an Xbox controller unless you mod it or something like that. So it might get you the basics, and if you really have to scrape by with one of those, awesome. So you can use your own radio if you have a trainer port with that USB dongle, or if you have something like a Tyrannus, you can plug it in directly with the USB port, which is kind of a neat feature. And I'm also going to tell you guys about USB. It's a sort of like a USB trainer. It has no radio board or anything. It's just like a simple joystick, and that's what it pairs with your computer. It just sees it as a joystick. Super, super simple and cheap. It's about 40 bucks, and it's just a USB 6-channel simulator thing. You can get a mode 2, which is what I use, or whatever you guys use. And honestly, the gimbals feel really crappy and cheap, but at least it's the right ergonomics, and that's what I learned on. So I bought one of those guys, and I flew that thing like to the ground until it like really didn't work anymore. And then I got lucky with, well, I guess lucky with a broken radio, and I use this now for my practice. And it's good because my other radio is the same, so it's always a 1-to-1 for me. So that covers it in terms of equipment. Let's start talking about some of these sims. And I am going to put some footage of the sims too here, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So let's take a look here at FPV Freerider, which is the first one that I'm going to cover. The reason why I'm going to cover FPV Freerider first is because you can actually get it for free, the basic version. It's also the version that Bardwell uses to teach people how to fly. So if you want to learn with the series, FPV Freerider is a good way to go. So I would highly recommend FPV Freerider if you are brand new or have not flown before and you just want to get a taste and see what it's all about. All right, so here we are looking at FPV Freerider, and as you can see, it's super simple, nothing too fancy. It doesn't look like anything fancy at all. It runs on Unity, and since we were in a demo version, we only really have access to Desert, which is really all you're going to need if you're just learning and you just need a place to practice, or if you have no idea whether or not this is something you really want to embark on. You can have some quality settings, stuff like that, and you can set up your input controller, and this is one of the ones that you can actually run on your phone, so you can use screen controls with it as well, which is kind of neat. Not really ideal to learn, but it's something to pass the time if you want to. So let's take a look here at what it's like. As I said, super simplistic graphics, nothing too crazy, but it runs pretty well. It uses an older drone, and as I'm going to show you guys here, it's not exactly the most punchy thing out there. You can do LOS if you want, and the rates on the demo version are super slow. So at first, just to get a feel, this is going to be fine, but once you spend some time with it, you're probably going to want to pay the $4.99 so that you can unlock all the options and configurations and make it a little bit faster, especially on the rates. So you can do line of sight, you can do FPV, you can do Acro or Horizon, which is nice if you're just learning, and I have it on high rates, but they're not very high. And the thing with FPV Freerider is that it's going to teach you some good throttle control. It's like not as floaty as some other ones that I've seen out there, but I think that's mostly because these motors are super underpowered. And it's a good way for you to learn and like start getting a feel for flying FPV and like doing some stuff. It's hard to do maneuvers with this super slow rates here, but you get an idea of what it's like. So I'd highly recommend this for you guys that are just starting out looking for something to learn. This is going to be a great option. As for practicing for racing and stuff like that, it's not exactly ideal for that because the maps are very limiting and the feel is just not quite there. You know, it also doesn't allow you the nice configuration that you get with other sims. So that's pretty much FPV Freerider in a nutshell. So let's take a look at some of the other free offerings that we have here. So our next free option, and which is entirely free, is actually the DRL Sim. The DRL Sim came about sometime last year to match up with the DRL series that was going on ESPN, and they also used it as a recruiting tool, which is really neat. And I think they're going to do that next year as well. So this is a good one to keep like on the back burner to like, you know, maybe you end up being a DRL pilot or something like that. I haven't flown DRL in a little while because they have broken it for me. It doesn't work on my radio anymore. So I'm not going to be able to show you guys any flight footage or anything like that. You can check it out online if you want. And if you're familiar with the DRL, you've probably already seen it. But at first, it wasn't that great in terms of feel. They were kind of tweaking it and whatever, and then eventually they got to a point where it felt pretty nice. A little bit floaty or whatever, but it was nice. The biggest appeal to me of DRL is the fact that it's free and that it has a ton of maps that are really, really cool and challenging. So once you get done with FPV Freerider, if you want a bit more of a challenge and you still don't want to spend any money, check out DRL. It's definitely a very good option for you to like hone your skill a little bit more. So now let's talk about what I consider to be some of the more serious contenders and the stuff that can really help you progress and learn new maneuvers and get better at racing or get better at freestyle. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is Velocidrone. And Velocidrone was really hot there for a while because they had some of the nicest physics and it provided a really awesome, seamless multiplayer experience. So let's load it up here real quick here, and I'm going to talk to you guys really quick about what it offers, and we'll do a little flying around. And this one is actually backed by Team Black Sheep, so that's interesting as well. Liftoff is backed by Immersion RC, so there's always been a bit of a rivalry between those two. So it'll be interesting to see how these two sims evolve over time. It seems like every few months, one of them releases a update that leapfrogs them ahead. So I'm talking to you guys about it, the state of the simulators as they are now, and as I've been using them for the past few months. So here we have Velocidrone, super simple. As I said, it has the multiplayer, which works great. So if you want to just mess around with friends or even do some racing, this is it. It does have community maps and it does have a track editor, which is awesome, but there's no centralized place to get maps, as I understand. You kind of have to do a share with somebody, like you both enter a room together, and then you can download the map there and save it that way. So we have a full set of settings. You can set up your gamepad and your graphics, and you can set up the quad, which is pretty interesting, which gives you like the drag, how much weight. You can change the props and even what flight controller we're using here. And in this case, the flight controller is being modeled by Betaflight 3.0.1, which is pretty good, and it works okay. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. Let's load it up. So it does have a few models for the drones, but I always end up flying the Mako because it seems to be the fastest. It just seems to change the power. There are quite a few different what they call like areas that you can set up maps in, and several maps. So let's check out this one here, is SFPV one. And my beef with Velocidrone is that it just doesn't feel right. I don't know. It feels really, it skids around and turns a lot, and the quad always feels like it has jitter. We can go in here and like check out the advanced drone settings, and as you can see, it's very similar to what you see in Betaflight, which is pretty cool. However, even with what I have set up here, like it says like it's the right, this is my degrees a second, this is pretty much how I set up everything. It doesn't feel right. It's not quite as fast. It does feel slightly slow. And the PIDs, literally leave them stock, because anytime I've tried to play with the PIDs in this thing, it just makes it worse. Like, just makes it fly worse. I cannot get this thing to fly well, or at least to my liking. So let's take a look here at the map. Like, the maps are pretty sweet. They run pretty well. It's going to be a little bit laggy because like my computer is not great and I am recording. And this one here was built by SFPV, so they have a ton of assets in terms of like gates and stuff like that. And the maps are super nice looking, and they run pretty fast. So it's a pretty nice place to just come and hang around. I like this one for freestyle a lot, and for multiplayer racing. But as you can see, it's incredibly floaty. Like, holy crap, that takes forever to come down. So I feel like it gives you an unbalanced idea as to how gravity works. Like, see how long it took to come down? So it is nice, and it does make some maneuvers a lot easier for sure, but I wouldn't say that this is the ideal training ground if you really want to learn and progress your skill. And as you can see, like, there's this weird jitter on it all the time, which I find super annoying. And the rates are just not right, despite it saying that it is correct. So some people swear by it, and if you like Velocidrone and you've been able to make it fly nice for you, awesome, more power to you. I have not, so it does not work for me. But this is a great option for multiplayer and for messing around and learning freestyle, and there are some really neat maps that you're not going to find anywhere else. Another cool feature that I like here is that you can clip your props. Like, literally, you can just clip them. I'm going to try to clip one right here. Oh, almost. Nope, didn't clip it. Let's clip another one here. Oh, yeah, that was a full-on crash. Just try a little clip. Ah, come on. I can't crash because I want to. This is hilarious. Just a little clip. So in terms of updates, they've been pushing some updates to this from time to time. It is slower than Liftoff, and like definitely slower than Liftoff, because Liftoff seems to update quite often. Rotor Rush updates fairly often as well, but these guys are not too far behind. It has improved, but I really feel like the physics have been lacking for the last little while. They just don't feel right for me, and I hate how much this thing jitters. But for a lot of people there, it works great, and it is definitely something that can push your flying forward a little bit, because it is a bit more challenging, and it is closer to reality than, let's say, FPV freerider or DRL in my experience. DRL just feels way too floaty. All right, so let's talk about our next simulator in the series. We already covered FPV freerider, we covered DRL and Velocidrone, which are all great options, but those are my bottom tier of simulators right now. And the next one I'm going to talk about is Liftoff. And I've been going back and forth between Liftoff and Rotor Rush quite a bit lately. And the reason being is because the two of them have probably the most accurate physics so far that I've encountered. The biggest difference being that Liftoff is a tiny bit more floaty than Rotor Rush, which to me is not great when practicing racing. So I definitely use Rotor Rush exclusively for practicing racing during racing season, and I use Liftoff as more of a freestyle practice, or just a way to blow off steam when I just want to mess around and do flips or whatever. So they're both great simulators, and if you pick either one of these, it's probably going to help progress you, because they're so close to the real thing, and you can spend a lot of time there and practice without breaking anything and without costing you anything other than the price of each one of these games. Liftoff, it's a one-time fee, and then I think Rotor Rush, you can pay like either £50 and then get it outright, or you can pay a membership, a recurring membership, and you can opt out at any time, which is what I do. So at any point, if I find that it's not working out for me, I can just leave. So let's talk about Liftoff. Liftoff has been around for quite a while, and it's backed by Immersion RC, so you know that there's some serious investment going into this and to build it out. It starts off like once you load it up, you can like immediately configure your controls, which is kind of nice, and I already have mine pretty much configured here, so I'm not going to worry about it. I'll save that. But Liftoff has been evolving quite a bit and getting better and better over time, which is pretty amazing. The first iterations were a little bit rough around the edges, but they've really come a long way. And one of the last updates that they did, they introduced a new Betaflight configurator, which I'm going to show you guys here in a second. So let's first, before I get to the Betaflight configurator, let's talk about what we have here. So you have a multiplayer that is seamless and works just like the one in Velocidrone, where you get to see each other, which is awesome. And it's not some, and I think the URL has that one too, but FPV freerider definitely not, and Rotor Rush not yet either. Their focus is completely different. Full-fledged set of options, controls, game, graphics, so you can change your camera, you can change your camera angle, you can change your OSD if you want to use it or not. But one of the neat features that this has that none of the others do is the quad workbench, which is pretty neat because it allows you to customize and configure your quad the whole way, like pretty much anything. I've been using the Hive because it's a frame that I fly and I really, really like it, and the frames don't seem to make a huge amount of difference in this game right now, but the motors and batteries and stuff like that do. So here you can customize things like we can change the battery, we could put a 6S, or I have a 4S right now, but let's put on Race Spec 5S, because why not? We can change the props. These props are okay, I'm not going to bother with those. These motors I had already chosen before, but like see, there's a ton of motors that you can choose here, and they do change how the quad feels, and it's pretty damn cool. So I like this feature a lot. There's tons of options. It's not something that you see anywhere else. The cameras are mostly cosmetic, and you can have an HD cam, which is kind of neat as well. Again, cosmetic. I don't think it really changes anything. You can change your antennas, and I guess eventually they're going to get receivers, which is just cool. I don't know. I like it. It's a cool little feature. Not something you're going to spend a ton of time on, but still pretty cool. So let's take a look here, and let's go do a little bit of free flying, because that's why we're here, right? So there are a ton of maps available. There's these areas, or these worlds, I'd say, and within them you can create any number of maps, which is pretty cool. One of the last ones that they added, which is really cool, is Hanover, which is a whole cityscape, which is perfect for you to do freestyle and just mess around. The cool thing is that Liftoff is all built in with Steam, so you do get full integration with Workshop, which means that it's super easy to get new tracks and stuff like that, and who knows what's going to be added to this in the future, which is pretty cool for modders and stuff like that. So this is a feature that I find that's really, really neat. And the feel of the quad is pretty decent. As I said, a little bit floaty, as you can see, but not as bad as Velocidrone. And the quad feels super sharp. And guess what? This quad is tuned exactly like my Hive is, like including the rates and everything else. Like it's all been tuned already, which is pretty badass. And like, it flies great, man. It feels great. I almost find that it's a little bit too easy to fly, so it might trick you into having a false sense of security, but it is a great way for you to learn maneuvers and all sorts of stuff like that. And this map just looks great. You can cruise around. There's no fail-safes or anything like that. Rotor Rush kind of has an annoying thing that like you lose video after you go too far, which I guess is cool because it's realistic, but sometimes you just want to have fun, right? So the quad feels great in this, and I would say it's a great way for you to hone your freestyle skill and practice some cool maneuvers and just fly over some pretty interesting, cool scenery, which you don't really get in Rotor Rush, which is what we're going to talk about next. But you can spend hours here just flying around this cityscape and doing some Gapit-style freestyle and just, I don't know, skirting or diving buildings in the safety of your own house without having to worry about hitting anything. And the damage model is quite interesting as well. Like you can damage props and keep flying, which is pretty neat. And like as I'm doing right here, flying through the bushes, it's somewhat degrading my props, not a huge amount. And it will also blow out. They will eventually break and blow out, and you will fall. And yeah, just got stuck in a tree there. Oh, no, stuck in the tree. All right, so let's take a quick look here at the flight controller settings, which is the interesting part. So just like Velocidrone, you get a nice little Betaflight looking thing here that you can set up. And I have it set up just like I have my quads and just like I have Velocidrone, the same. Except this one feels right. I don't know why. Velocidrone does not feel the same. The same value as everything else is just not correct. But this feels right. Everything about it feels right. The sticks feel exactly like they feel on my machine, which is great. So this is why I say this one here is better to push your skill and to really, really hone your stuff, is because it's going to feel the same as your quad as long as you set it up the same, which is, to me, incredible, especially if you're trying to learn and progress. So as I said, I go back and forth between these two a lot because they seem to improve. One will release an update and it'll get much better. Another one will release an update and it'll get much better. So I just keep going back and forth between these two. And whichever one you want to choose to learn or practice, go for it. If you're a novice, I'm definitely going to recommend go with the free options, because you don't want to be spending a ton of money. And the whole objective here is to save money and allow you to learn much more quickly than you would if you were breaking parts and trying to do this stuff in the park. This is no substitute to the real thing. Like if you really want to get good, you're really going to have to go out there and fly, but it will help you a ton. All right, let's talk about our next simulator and the last simulator we're going to be covering on this video. So for those of you not familiar with Rotor Rush used to be called FPV event. Or drone simulation. It was very confusing. The thing was called FPV event UK or something. The website was dronesimulation.co.uk, and now it's called Rotor Rush. I'm not sure why. I think that they had some investment or something happened. I don't know. But it seems like they're going to stick with Rotor Rush, and things seem to have improved since they became Rotor Rush. So when it was FPV event, the physics were fantastic. Probably the most accurate physics that I have felt to date. And they've continued with that trend. So as you can see here, it's not the prettiest looking interface or anything like that. But they did add this, which was not there before. This is a list of all the tracks. Unfortunately, the tracks are not quite available from the community right now. They're all being made by these guys. But one of the selling factors for me is that they have all the multi-GP stuff, like all the UTTs, so you can practice all the UTTs without having to hope that somebody recreated it accurately or try to find one in the workshop or online. These guys recreated it perfectly, like correct. And it also has the MGP Championship 2016 and 2017 regional finals, which is awesome. And all this stuff gets put onto a leaderboard, so you can really see and compare yourself against other pilots out there and see how you're doing in the virtual space at least. As you can see, the graphics and all that, this is not their main concern. Their main concern is realism. So you can pick between a few different drones here as well. Definitely not as much option as Liftoff, about as much option as Velocidrone, but I tend to stick to the last one here, which is the custom 200 FPV Racer, which is closest to the mini quads that we fly today. So you can pick between all sorts. Actually, they even have a tiny whoop one, which is pretty neat. That's a selling factor right there for me. And this is why one of the reasons why this is my top pick, not just the realism and all that, but the fact that you have the tiny whoop and just a few different cool tracks to race. So you can pick up between all these different tracks and you can practice here and really hone your racing. This is literally for racing. You might do freestyle if you want to, but as I said, there is a limit on the video, and I'm going to show you guys. So let's pick here. Let's check out Regional Finals 2017 because why not? So one of the annoying things to me is that I always have to change the camera angle here because I want something over 120. If you're going to use 120, fine, don't worry about it. Another thing that is kind of a minus point for me on Rotor Rush is this. What in the hell is this? This is how you set your rate. So you have to set your low degrees first, which is weird, and then you have to set your expo and then your super rate degrees. I do not know how this math works at all, but after fiddling a crap ton, I found that this works pretty close to what I use day to day. You can change your power factor, so I'm using 5 because that's closer to 5S because the 4S is a bit anemic and doesn't feel like my 2600 kV motors, so this feels a lot closer. And that pretty much covers it in terms of the configurations for the flight control. So another thing that I find too is that you have to, the graphic options aren't great. There's not a huge ton of configuration in that aspect, but you can just basically drag things around. And I try to keep the FPS high so that it feels as realistic as possible. So I have things kind of turned down here. They look a little bit ugly, but this is good for me to practice at least because this is what it looks like in the camera anyway. So what the hell is going on here? So, and the cool thing about this as well is that you can set an arm switch. None of the other ones have this. I guess on Liftoff you can do a stick arm, but this guy here you actually have to arm. So it's kind of cool because then you have to remember to do it. So you have to arm and then you can fly. And this thing here just feels as close as possible to the real thing. It gives you a little ghost too so you can race against yourself, but it's a great way to hone your racing skills. And I'm going to be a little bit sloppy here because I'm talking to you guys and I'm not concentrating as well as I probably should, but I might be able to make it. Oh, yeah. Sometimes it does that too, which is kind of weird, but I think it's my controller. But it feels pretty great to race with this stuff, guys. It just feels right. The quad isn't too floaty. It falls as I predict, and it feels right on the turns. Maybe a little. There's a lack of whatchamacallit, prop wash for sure that some of the others do have, like Velocidrone and definitely Liftoff has a little bit of prop wash. You can eliminate with tuning, but this guy's here, you don't have any. But the feel of the quad, how it goes around corners and how it accelerates and all that, I'd say it's pretty damn close to real. So this is my main tool for practicing racing. The only problem is that you don't really have custom maps, so you can't really practice a race that you're going to do on the weekend or something. Like for example, people are setting those up in Velocidrone or Liftoff because they have a track editor, and maybe these guys will eventually plan on releasing a track editor like that as well. But what the hell? Oh, my radio just shut off. Great. So anyway, maybe they'll come out with a track editor which would really improve the usability of this as a training tool. Right now, I use it as a training tool for technique and just general racing. This is how I like practice my turns, practice being more aggressive, and instead of practicing the actual race track, which would be much more helpful to me. So guys, that pretty much covers it in what terms of simulators. So just to recap, if you're just starting out, I definitely recommend that you either grab FPV, freerider, or DRL because they're both free and they're going to get you started. And do check out the GitGud series about learning how to fly, where he takes you step by step through everything. It's going to be linked in the bottom as well. Get yourself some sort of controller that is as close an analog to the real thing, so you can start building that muscle memory right away. If you're looking for something that is going to push your skill forward or hone your skill a little bit more, definitely look into either Velocidrone, Liftoff, or Rotor Rush. In my opinion, Rotor Rush is superior for racing, and Liftoff is superior for freestyle just because of the map options and all different sorts of nooks and crannies that you can fly through. So it's really up to you what kind of style you're looking for. This isn't meant to start a holy war on simulators or anything like that. This is just my experience on the simulators and hopefully help some of you guys out there. Now, for the next episode on the series for GitGud, I'm going to be covering equipment. So you're going to make sure that you subscribe to the channel, especially if you're new and just getting started. And I'm going to give you guys some tips about what equipment you should look into to get started into this hobby. So guys, as always, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something here today, and I'll catch you